Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries RPG podcast. I'm your host John, and today I'm going to be answering some of the voicemail messages that we've received. And first up on this voicemail episode, we have a message from Randy of Biggest Geekers. Take it away, Randy.
So I have OSE's basic game tome, and I kickstarted the recent Kickstarter to get the Advanced Fantasy. I'm really leaning toward using that. I've read lots of the book, and I do love the layout. And honestly, I got it basically to some of your reviews a few years ago. In particular, I think it was an Advanced OSE, but your love of it is clear. I like your Winter's Daughter breakdown. That module, that approach to writing a module, boy, it has a lot. Has a lot to draw it in. I mean, simple, direct, but open and easy to read. I mean, I'm just a big fan of that. Trying to find it a little bit cheaper, or I don't know what other OSE modules you'd recommend. I am going to be running an OSE game that I'm going to title Creeps on the Borderlands at VentureCon this year. So should be interesting. I'm using OSE for the first time. So anyway, I appreciate that, and you keep up the good work, and take care.
Thanks very much, Randy. Yeah, as you say, I'm a big fan of old school essentials, particularly in the layout of the adventure modules that they have published for it, and the sort of very clear style that they use, making it very easy for a GM to quickly find information that's very clearly presented without having to flick through numerous pages to try and get to the important bits that you need when you're running a game. In terms of modules that I would recommend, Hole in the Oak is pretty good. That's one of the earlier ones, although I guess it's been re-released and sort of like pimped up a little bit recently. There's the Isle of the Plantagenet Mage, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that's pretty good. There's Incandescent Grottos and Halls of the Blood King, which has a sort of vampire-y slant to it, and those are all modules that I really enjoy, along with the one that you've mentioned. I'm sure there's others out there, but those are a few that I've particularly enjoyed. I'm glad you found the reviews of OSE useful, and I'm glad I've been able to pass on some of that infectious enthusiasm to yourself. Let me know how you get on with your Creeps on the Borderlands game. Love the title, can't wait to hear how that goes. Next up, we've got a few calls from Jason.
Hey, Hannah and John. Excellent episode on your top 3 monsters. Really enjoyed hearing Hannah back on the show. I know you've been really busy, schedules not aligning, all that. Understood.
Yeah, it's been pretty difficult, to be honest, recently. I'm starting up a new job soon. Same company, just moving to a different department, but it's a big shift for me, and training for that's going to chew up a lot of my time. My wife Hannah is starting up her own craft-based business, which is chewing up a lot of her time. And to top that off, it's currently LARP and convention season, so we're spending a lot of time on that. It's very difficult for us to sort of get together and record things and block out the time for it, because, well, when we've got the time to actually spend together, we kind of want to spend a bit of quality time together. But hopefully, as things sort of settle down, he says, touch wood, crossing fingers and all that, we'll get some time to make some more episodes together.
As far as having vampires with unique weaknesses and things like that, very Captain Kronos of you. Yeah, excellent episode. Keep up the great work. And because you're my friend, I'll be honest with you. I know a lot of people like the music. At the beginning and the end of your show, when there's a pause when you're talking and the music surges and then goes back down when you talk again, I can't stand that. I'm not going to stop listening, of course, because I love you guys. But if it was a different podcast that I wasn't invested in, I would have turned that right off. So that's just me, and I may be different than everybody else, so I wouldn't base how you do your podcast on my word alone, but I felt I should tell you. Take care.
No, absolutely, dude. I appreciate the honesty. And it's a difficult thing to judge, to be honest, with the music, because some people like it, some people don't. I tend to sort of fluctuate between the two. Sometimes I really love it, sometimes I don't. For this episode, as you'll have heard by the time you get to this point, I've just sort of faded it out completely, and I'll fade it back in at the end. So maybe I'll go for that more in future, which is what we originally used to do before I started tinkering around on Audacity and sort of reading online tutorials and stuff like that. But who knows, if enough people don't like the music, we'll get rid of it. I mean, it's not anything I'm going to really lose any sleep over. But I'm glad, regardless of that, you're still listening, dude, and still calling in. It's always very much appreciated. And like I say, yeah, we love the honest feedback, dude. Much appreciated. And I believe we've got some more now from Jason.
Hey, Hannah and John, this is Jason. Enjoyed your Kobold episode. I always prefer them as canine, excising the lizard traits. But, I mean, either way, as much as I want to hate on WotC for turning them into lizard men, obviously it's a post-Gygaxian thing. So we can just hate on the post-Gygaxian D&D. There's no need to hate on anything, actually.
Well, I suppose I'm going to have to put this pitchfork and burning torch down then. No, I'm just kidding, man. Yeah, absolutely agree. There's no need to hate on anything that much, especially something so sort of fairly inconsequential. After all, you don't like one version of it, ignore it. You like another version, use that. Take what you want, leave what you don't, as the old pirate saying goes.
Like you said, run it the way you want to run it in your campaign, It's whatever you want to run. Just understand the lizard version is stupid and the dog version is right. But it's all good. Thank you so much for putting this episode together. I think you did a great analysis of it. And yeah, when you look at the historical thing, you go like Palladium Fantasy, and they're basically, like miners. They're more like dwarves and stuff in there, right? Dwarves and gnomes. So it just depends how you want to run them. But it's your world, your campaign, so run it the way you want to. And yeah, it was great hearing you two talking together again. And I look forward to your next episode. Take care.
Thanks very much, dude. Always appreciate you calling in. Yeah, we enjoy doing these episodes, although, as I've said previously, our time schedules are a bit messed up at the minute, and these do take a little bit longer than the normal just sort of me talking episodes to record, or the voicemail episodes. So we can't do them as often as we would perhaps like, particularly because we enjoy sort of delving into the mythology a bit. But we have to bear in mind that, we don't want to do like hours long episodes. Not that there's anything wrong with that, this podcast to do that very well, but we want to try and keep ours down to sort of like that 10-15 minute mark, so it's almost like bite-sized chunks, and with a few exceptions we try and break up the longer ones. But yeah, we do hope to do some more sort of monster style episodes in the future, as and when we get time and something spurs our imagination. But thanks again for the call, dude. Much appreciated.
Hey, Hannah and John, Jason here. Yep, Pigface orcs are my favorite too. In fact, when I played in Carl Rodriguez's Broken Lands game, using the Orcs of Thar Gazetteer for Beckme.
Yeah, it's funny you mention the Gazetteers, Jason, because I've just actually picked up my first one of those, which is the Karamikos one on print on demand from Drive-Thru. The quality is not 100% great, but it's workable, and I couldn't find an original copy for anything other than silly prices online, so I'm hoping to potentially acquire a few more of those. I'm reading through the Karamikos one at the moment, which is GA1 or GAZ1, I forget exactly how the codes work, but it's the first one. I'm very much enjoying that, since it's helping fill in a bit more of my knowledge of the known world or Mystara, and I'm sure eventually I'll get around to working up to the Orcs of Thar, and I have sort of heard a number of people mention it with great fondness, so I'm looking forward to finding out what all the fuss is about.
I played a Pigface orc in that campaign. As far as imagery, Deathstalker, the original, has a Pigface orc in it, pretty prominent. I'll send you on Discord, I'll send you the trailer, and you can see a number of images of him during the trailer. And there's one place in the movie where they're having a feast, and there's this roasted pig, with the apple in the mouth right in front of this Pigface orc, and he's chowing down. Kind of crazy. But Deathstalker actually has a lot of magic in it for one of these sword and sorcery movies. A lot of them don't really have a ton of magic. If you pulled the rapiness out of that movie, it would be a pretty good movie. I mean, it'd be sword and sorcery movie, but pretty good. But it's a Roger Corman movie, and he forced that rapiness into it. So what can you say? But it's still arguably one of the better entries in the sword and sorcery genre. Definitely better than stinkers like David Carradine's The Warrior and the Sorceress.
Thanks for sending that clip over, Jason. Yeah, it does look vaguely familiar. I think I might have seen Deathstalker at some point in the past. And yeah, the pig-faced orc in the trailer was spot on. I'm a big fan of that sort of slightly more bestial, rather than the slightly more human-like orcs that occurred later on. Again, nothing wrong with either, it's just personal preference.
Regarding John's episode on random character creation, yeah, they can be useful if you need those things. For me, the random character generation was that, that lonely fun of sitting there with the AD&D First Edition Dungeon Master's Guide and creating random parties and things like that. There's generators in there to do it. But instead of pushing a button, you're rolling each thing, and I find that more exciting and more enjoyable than having the computer do all the work. But I can see there are cases where you might want the computer to do the work. It just isn't as fun for you, the GM, to do. So I guess trade convenience for enjoyment. Anyhow, take it easy. Talk to you soon.
Thanks very much, Jason. Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you've got the time to do it in and you enjoy the actual physical feeling of rolling the dice and doing it manually, there is nothing wrong with that. I suppose coming at it from a GM perspective, I tend to value the expediency and the speed of just using the computer to do it, because I'm already using a computer to store my notes and stuff like that. So why not take advantage of the fact it can do all this stuff a lot more quickly than I can, especially when I'm really only concerned with the result. Whereas if I was perhaps doing it for a bit of solo play or something like that, I would be more interested in doing it myself. But like you say, to each his own. There's certainly nothing wrong with doing it manually if you've got the time and if you find that enjoyable. And next up we have a couple of calls from Ron. Take it away.
Hey, John and Hannah, this is Ron. I listened to your episode about kobolds. I prefer the dog-like looking kobolds, although I agree they always had some lizard-like features and basically had filled the role of lesser goblins in D&D. They're basically the minion of minions in D&D. But that was a great episode, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks very much. Glad you enjoyed the episode. And yeah, as you say, kobolds originally sort of the goblin. I mean, way back in sort of the little brown books, they didn't even have a separate set of stats. They were just lower hit point goblins, as we say in the episode. But gradually they've sort of attained their own identity and they've become more distinct, which I quite like, because in actual mythology you tend to see a lot of sort of monsters and creatures getting lumped together and then they'll get separated out because of a particular legend, and it always makes me smile the fact that some of the monsters, as they progress through D&D history, sort of mimic that process. Personally, I prefer the slightly more dogmen version of kobolds as well, but I can see under certain circumstances and in certain scenarios that having the slightly more draconic or dragon worshipping elements of the later kobolds would be interesting and conducive to a particular scenario.
Hey, John and Hannah, Ron back here again talking about my top 3 monsters. And I'm not sure what my third monster is, but my number 1 is dragons. And I'm not talking about the non-intelligent ones. I'm talking about the intelligent ones. I love me some dragons. My second favorite monster is hobgoblins, because hobgoblins could be that horde-like humanoid creature, but I am really drawn to their lawful evil, disciplined, militaristic aesthetic over orcs. I've kind of moved away from orcs for that, and have treated orcs more like just basically primal forces of nature, kind of like how they are in Eberron. Actually, exactly how they are in Eberron. So dragons and hobgoblins, and I don't know what my third is because there's so many creatures out there that are like, oh wait, I know what my third is. Owl bears. How can I forget owl bears? I love owl bears. They are the quintessential D&D creature. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ron. I think there's some great choices there, and it's difficult to argue with dragons as a favourite. I mean, let's face it, it's 50% of the title in the world's most popular fantasy role-playing game. You can't really go wrong with a dragon. Well, as long as they're played right and they're not overused, but by and large, they're pretty much a staple of the fantasy genre, and they come in such a bewildering variety of forms and different types that chances are whatever sort of encounter you want to run, there is going to be a dragon that suits that particular niche. As for hobgoblins, yeah, I see your point. I've always sort of seen orcs as more the sort of chaotic, evil barbarians, or a sort of primal force of elemental savagery, the sort of barbarism that in the original D&D game, where you had a more sort of like points of light setting where there's a few little spots of civilization, and outside of that it's barbarism and chaos. Orcs represented that force, whereas, as you say, hobgoblins and things like that, they were very much the sort of lawful evil, like military evil sort of style of they're organised, they choose to do evil, but they do it in a more sort of organised and militaristic fashion. So they're just as evil and just as scary, but in a very different manner. And as for owlbears, yeah, got to give you that one, man. I love an owlbear. It's such an even though it's the original concept is a pretty ridiculous one, you know, just sort of mashing two animals together. Over the years, it's just become such an iconic creature type in D&D that it always brings a smile to my face and to players' faces, unless they get killed by it, when an owlbear crops up in a game. So there we are. That's it for this voicemail episode. Thank you very much to all of my wonderful callers. If you'd like to get in touch and maybe be featured in a future episode, then you can do so in a few different ways. You can drop us a voicemail message to SpeakPipe or Anchor using the links in the description below, or you can send us an email to rddrpgpodcast@gmail.com. So until we see you again, take care, stay safe, and whenever you're playing, have fun.